the 11th of May, 2022. Make sure to go to my website, www.susanmeeling.com. Make sure to subscribe to my official YouTube channel, like my official YouTube videos, and share the link to my official YouTube videos. If you are going to leave a comment, please do make sure to have etiquette and respect. So, as you can see from the backdrop, the definition in the doorways. Now, whether or not you can see the individual dots as far as the paint is concerned in this particular official YouTube video or not, as far as that's concerned, as well as the granular aspects as to this particular door, either one. If you cannot, well then, now you see how I saw after I woke up from my coma, after my head injury on Palm Sunday in 2000. So all of the individuals, whether at Fort Sam Houston in San Antonio, Texas, or Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio, Texas, Camp Bullis Camp Bullis Army installation, or anywhere else in the state of Texas, Fort Worth, Austin, anywhere I had driven, Washington State after I wound up there, this is what you looked as. Because it takes my after effects from my head injury on Palm Sunday in 2000 a bit of time to actually be capable to remember you, what you look as physically. So I have damages after my head injury on Palm Sunday in 2000. And so there's these aspects of memory deficits and cognitive disorders, which has to do with specific, not necessarily physical details. So while some people wouldn't know what cognitive tests are, in regards to the temporary retirement duty leave when I was going through those different factors. There were these blocks, and one side of the block was red, and one side of the block was beigeish white. Another side of the block had half red and half white. That was on one of each of the sides of this square type block. And in this particular test, there would be a picture where you would have these blocks or squares and you would have to make the pattern. You had a certain amount of time to take the side of the red block, the white block, or the half red, half white. And there's a picture, the starting ones, I don't know how many pieces it was, but I know it started as a low number. I think you started with one. And you had to, for those who know those types of tests. So I'm going to refer to the Dallas Dominant Mentor Program. Lilith had this exercise where everybody in the class had started with their backs against the wall. And then she'd read some what have you, and you'd either take a step forward or a step backwards, or a few steps forward or a few steps backward. It depended. And I've discussed this before writing about this. So then at the end, back against the wall, and then turn around to see who's whatever, and all that. Well, in the starting point of after waking up from my coma, after my head injury on Palm Sunday in 2000, I ran through the time to the number of blocks. So the most amount, for those who would know, because I think the total number of blocks comes in it's about 8 by 12 box of all of these little blocks that are either red or white or half and half. So what some people don't know is there's different types of memory deficits and different types of cognitive disorders. And so the most number of blocks from what were an inch by inch, so you know the number of how many could fit in there, as far as compacted. I got at most up to 7 before the neurologist or neuropsychologist said, and that's enough. So to each and every one of you people that had stirred up needless drama, were upset because physically all you look at is this until I actually get to know you. And not just get to know you as to who you are, but literally get to be capable to see you. So unlike whatever portrayal that some people have, or whatever their thoughts are, how you physically look to me from the time frame of 2000 through however long it took for me to get accustomed to an area. This is what you look as. So there's that filter where it's like a black and white, and this is what you look as until I actually get to know you. So a picture online, yes, I can recognize certain definition. I'm not going to remember it. I've been honest about that. So in person, face to face in person, if the only way I've seen you is through that, this is what you're going to look as. Doesn't matter how many times I look at your picture. I won't recognize it. I may, to a degree, but not really. Because it goes back to the in-person, face-to-face in person. So individuals who have had a head injury and have dealt with that, this is probably as close of an example to give to a reference. So all of you people who have not had a head injury, this is what you look as. Though when you choose to have issues, which you don't have the right to have issues with people who have survived a head injury, this is what you look as. It doesn't matter your skin tone. It doesn't matter your hair color at all. It doesn't even matter your hair type. This is what you look as. That's it. There's no texture or definition until time goes onward. So the situations in scuba diving, it's an extremely closed, small amount of people, unlike what's supposed to be considered the adult consenting lifestyle. So in the military, I'm sure it's an even smaller number because of certain types. Not the civilian recreational scuba diving while being military. No, I refer to the groupings of individuals that are specifically trained. And so that's an even smaller number of individuals. So those are like SEALs and Navy, MRAR types, where there's only a certain number, and it's if you do the scuba diving portion. So if you do that, there's those who do that. Not all will. And so I don't know what the specific requirements for what I call MRAR or recon is what I thought, but the terminology is kind of in certain ways similar. So the references to those in Illinois that were upset because I didn't remember you, not just because of the lack of amount of time. This is what you physically looked as. I had a subarachnoid hemorrhage in the frontal lobe of my brain. So while those people may not have known what blood on the brain translated to, it doesn't change the fact that that's what it translated to. Doesn't change the fact I was in a coma either. Doesn't change the fact I had a head injury. It doesn't even matter that my head injury was on Palm Sunday in 2000. That's just a linear aspect of. So all of the different situations that I needlessly dealt with, such as in reference to, I'm in the process of authoring a journal blog on my website, www.susanmeeling.com, at the Ornery PSA area. So my biological sister had gotten in trouble. So she had been moved from Illinois to San Antonio. My biological mother and biological father signed documentation where I was put as the legal guardian. I am the one and only sponsor in reference to that time frame especially, though it's still the same. And so, being the one and only sponsor as to my blue ID card regarding the Armed Forces of the United States of America, sure, with these blocks, I have the issues as far as memory deficits and cognitive disorders. I obviously, just like any other human being, have weaknesses and strengths. Just like every other human being. So anybody who wishes in regards of perfection, well, are you yourself perfect? Otherwise, you have no actual right to judge in certain references, especially in regards of my biological mother, biological father, biological sister, ex-in-laws, and additionally, people in the different lifestyles. Because you don't ever know. Communities, you don't ever know if somebody could in the future or has had one. So you don't ever know that. That is your baseline point of the 10 Commandments. It doesn't matter whether or not they have or would. What matters is the reasons why. Because you personally do not know. So, this is what you physically looked as. And this is what people physically look as, to this day. When I go do something, if I don't recognize them, because I don't know them, this is what they look as. It doesn't matter what their ethnic background is to me. Physically, this is how they look, because I don't recognize them. This is what happens when your type of people think you know better. And you don't. So I have proven that I can maintain and sustain myself within the various levels of. Physically, people don't really matter to me that way. Not to be rude, it's just the facts. I don't care what your skin tone is. I don't care what your hair is. That's not who you are. It's part of what makes you who you are, but it's not who you are. So, that's just the facts. Who you are is within you, in comparison. It's a combination of actions, words, deeds, and various choices. That's what makes you who you are. Your character is what makes you who you are. By your choices and the contexts of, with your intentions, of genuine intentions. So, sure, I know that there are other people who have had a head injury. I know that. But see, that doesn't translate to people having any right to cause any needless problems. That's actually the point when you think about it. So, think about it this way now when it comes to my scuba diving. Remember, by the time I get into scuba diving, the subarachnoid hemorrhage in the frontal lobe of my brain is not gone for even a full year yet, out from the MRI and CAT scan viewpoint. Then, you have the situations in reference to I'm in Carrollton, Texas. I moved because my biological mother and biological father didn't understand that I have rules and requirements. Having been born and raised in New Jersey, I don't understand how they didn't understand that. I suppose in some ways they lived in Crystal Lake too long, in comparison to remembering what etiquette and respect is to the state of New Jersey, or Philadelphia, or Pittsburgh, or one of the 5 boroughs. You don't just show up to somebody's spot. But I had etiquette and respect. So my biological sister, apparently that was her teenage years, as far as that was concerned. And that's that. I didn't have that. So I did for a little bit, but not really, because I didn't have that in New Jersey, because I was a teenager in New Jersey. It wasn't until shortly before I turned 16 years old that I was moved to Illinois. And then I was gone by the time, before I was 18. So only about a month, maybe, or 2 months, 3 months before my birthday, where I would turn 16. More than 7 months, 6 months before I would turn 18, which means it translates to a few months before 2 years. That is the only amount of time I had as a teenager in the state of Illinois. So that's kind of a thing that certain types of people don't seem to understand, apparently. So then there's my Medal of Honor art project trips, okay? And there's the stuff as far as my son, my daughter, and I, in comparison, okay? And so you don't just show up without, one, most importantly, if there's an invitation, you find out what the RSVP requirements are. That's a situation that is heavily enforced in the tri-state area, even back in the 1980s and 1990s. Again, my babysitter's husband, director of security, World Trade Center and World Trade Center Plaza. So, you know, my biological mother and biological father and biological sister needed to remember that. Maybe they didn't know I assisted, and yet they know I took Taekwondo. So it's one of those, what did you expect? Because then it's one of those, yeah, you lived in Illinois from 1998 through 2003. I did not. You're from wherever you're from. I am not. I was born and raised in New Jersey. And so I only had a very small amount of time in that area, and I warned them that I would do best if I had moved to Chicago instead of Crystal Lake, Illinois. And this is where those people from Crystal Lake, Illinois, and areas of that got upset, that had whatever thought processes. Now you understand when I said, so if anybody has any issues with people just randomly showing up or whatever, there you go. Or conversely, if they haven't ever paid attention to that. Because you just don't show up without either calling first, if it's not an invitation with an RSVP, or if there's not an RSVP, it would be known. So if there's not an RSVP and it's just, oh, if you can make it, that's what an open invitation is. If you are invited to something and you're told to speak with them, that translates to you have to RSVP. That's how that goes. So it's how that goes. So then my biological mother and biological father and biological sister decided to move to Texas. I didn't want to move back to Illinois. Did not care about the sunlight. This is how badly I did not like where I was in Illinois. That the different type of ambient lighting, I would rather stay in the state of Texas than go back to Illinois. See, and so learned there's not much of a difference, unfortunately. Nonetheless, in certain areas there are, and in other areas not so much, apparently. So in San Antonio, this is what each and every one of you look as. Doesn't matter what your ethnic background is. It's just the facts. Don't care. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter what your skin tone is. Does not matter at all. You don't register. And so that filter, that's what you look at. That filter is actually more defined than you are for that kind of clarification. So 2000 through 2008, that's what you looked as. Except for my son and my daughter. My son and my daughter? No. No. I could see my son and my daughter at any point in time. That was not an issue. Everybody else, on the other hand, that's what you were. So there were these 3 teenagers that, however, they showed up at my house that I did not invite at all. My house, my property, my VA home loan. I'm the one and only sponsor, and I'm the legal guardian. So my biological sister and 3 people are at my house. Sure, I'm the legal guardian regarding Patricia. She had gotten in trouble in regards to when she had lied and went to whatever aspects of she said it was for school, and then it was she'd be back by 6:30, then it was 8:30, then it was 10:30, and then when midnight came around, I was running frantically because if you've met Mike or Anna, you know. And they were in Illinois, and so no. And I had extremely definitive memories of my childhood and teenager years. So people didn't believe me, but that proof after the length of time. And so, and then so these 3 people that I don't know who they are, after my biological sister and the 2 males in Mike and Anna's garage, as far as after having called repeatedly regarding the phone numbers from my landline house in San Antonio, Texas, for hours over and over and over and over again, and over and over and over and over and over and over again. Yeah, that's what I did, but what does that matter? Because those types of needless problems. This is the situation where my biological sister might have been annoyed. I don't care. She wasn't in charge. She didn't have the right to. So those types of needless problems, because, as an actual mom, unlike a stupid, childish, teenager, spoiled brat that is sent to somebody else's house that has the nerve to have an attitude problem, and then when they get told what to do, and it's not even that much, they throw a little temper tantrum, and then any problems in reference to my son and or my daughter and or I, that sort of childish garbage. So those types, those 4 who were not allowed on my property to do anything as they had. Again, I did not invite my biological sister to do anything. I specifically told her what she was allowed to do and what she was not. She didn't have any options. legal guardian, sponsor, blue ID card, spoiled brat. UCMJ, she wasn't even a dependent, yet obviously she was far from being dependable. So in reference to my biological sister at that time, Patricia Ann Hom, she stirred up this needless garbage. I did not allow her to invite people over on my behalf. These two males don't know who they are, don't care. And then another female, don't know who she is, I don't care. I did not invite them to my property. I did not allow this. Because she had gotten in trouble, I took the car keys because she was irresponsible. So she threw this little temper tantrum as anybody ever dealt with a stupid teenager that is complaining and wants to try to impress people in comparison to a single mom, even though legal, let's be honest, on the justice of the peace, raising my son and my daughter by myself, taking care of everything that I can, and I have this trifling biological sister of mine in my house. And so I contact, I suppose it's Skunk Boy, as far as his mother, so that way she could actually, I was born and raised in the 1980s and 1990s in the tri-state area. Excuse me for having class enough to actually inform you to actually take care of the health and wellness. In comparison, Adam's mom or whatever. And the rest of this little, because 2 plus 2 plus 2 plus 2, gang of 8 needless problems in San Antonio, Texas. On my property, in my backyard, those 4 teenagers that I did not invite, as they made the choice to do so without my permission. Now then there's that whore of abomination's mother and whore of abomination's wedding. Those people, unlike how I did not allow, I don't know if those backwoods types allow children in elementary school to drive vehicles. However, I have common sense. And so my elementary age school son and my elementary age school daughter were not going to drive themselves from Carrollton, Texas to Austin, Texas for that abomination of a wedding. So as their mom and being responsible, unlike some types of those people, if any connection regarding the whore of abomination's mother, whore of abomination's bride, and wedding of abominations regarding the Holmes Millers situation, as far as those other whores of abomination in reference to the rest of those people that were there in 2009, sure, you invited my underage minor son to be a ring bearer, and you had invited my daughter, underage minor, to be the flower girl. I lived in Carrollton, Texas, you low-class, uneducated, spoiled, little-minded, arrogant, bigoted individuals, as far as the Millers and those associations thereof, in my opinion. Because if your issues were whatever they were about invitation, and one of those whatevers, which since my biological sister, that started where I had not invited them on my property. So sure, when I spoke with the mother to Adam regarding, I guess, skunk hair boy, as I refer him as, the dark brown, almost blackish hair with a streak almost down the center of a yellowish blondish color, hair to here, in the year of 2003, that skunk hair boy was not invited in reference to my house, my VA home loan, me being a sponsor, my property, my backyard, my finances, all of my bills. He was not invited. by me. I didn't do that. I did not invite him. My biological sister, whatever that is, that's not me. I didn't give her that. So then there's the male who could be Zach Miller. I did not invite him on my property. I did not invite him to my house. Showed up. This female. I did not invite her. Light-ish brunette hair. Lightish, medium-ish brunette hair. I did not invite her to my house. I did not. They decided to eat my food without my invitation to do so. Not to be rude. Here's an example, tennis. In those references, you make sure that certain whatevers, so like, for example, my son's team, I had made sure to get, and it was fine that he wanted to give someone else a cupcake, that's fine. It's just, I have to make sure that the team got theirs before going on. It's not rude, there's only so many. And so, fine, I will be cordial. And so they used my television and my utilities and then my food that I cooked and the what heavies thereof, and then they chose without my invitation. Remember this. They did not clean up after themselves after not having been invited by me in that reference. And then the skunk hair boy, the reference to him having chosen to pick up the can of hairspray and light it on fire. After several hours of dealing with those 4 teenagers that I personally did not invite to do any of that in my house, on my property, or on my patio in my backyard, I did not give them permission. I did not invite them to do that. That's common sense as well. So I did not invite that. My biological sister did not have authority to. Just for additional clarification. And it's still my house, my property. And those people, those literal Neanderthal teenagers, because let's be honest, like I'm fairly certain I'm not the only person who knows how certain types are as far as etiquette and respect. So those teenagers that were either sophomores or juniors in high school that year, as far as those types, were not invited. And then they had the nerve to have an attitude problem when I walked calmly upstairs after having repeatedly, for over a half hour, if not to an hour, telling the skunk hair boy to not light the can of hairspray on fire. And so, in my defense, literally, because it was sprayed in my direction, it was sprayed in the direction of the other 3, which, you're welcome for preventing you from having to deal with that, the 3 of you, you arrogant, ungrateful individuals, if you didn't remember that. Nonetheless, little skunk hair boy decided to point it in the direction of my house towards my son's room, as well as towards me. At that point in time, after an hour of this almost, I had every legal right to walk upstairs calmly, unlock my firearm safe that I purchased, I picked out, I found it. I did that. Already discussed that and put that in writing. You can go to my website, www.susanmeeling.com, and look through my books as well as my journal blog for that. And so as far as the Gamma 3 firearm safe that I personally picked out, I looked at all of those specifications. Not my dead ex-husband. No. That was by my specifications. I picked that out. I also arranged the coding. That's mine. So that gamma 3, yes, mine. So 1776. And then as the hydraulics, so beautiful. I really am for the Second Amendment. Got out the firearm, and then walked calmly down the stairs. Or maybe I did it when I was downstairs. It is what it is. I think it was the Glock, though it could have been the baby Desert Eagle, one or the other, I don't know. And at that point in time, it was the choice between let me see what the label is, or let me go protect my son and my daughter's life, sure, whatever, as far as my now done, those three other teenagers' lives, all of my neighbors' lives in the cul-de-sac area, and that had attached fences as far as property. So that whole area, and then, within reason of a certain amount of distance to neighbors because of the wood fence line, their lives too, and property. Excuse me, I wasn't looking for the label. Yeah. I didn't graduate basic training, so I don't know if I would have recognized what I do know that. One, you do this, or maybe both as far as, but I do know for certainty, only one, the trigger is the safety at the exact same time as far as your finger is concerned. That's the Glock. So I don't know which one is which. That I grabbed because, it is what it is. That's what I dealt with. I got the firearm safes. I knew better. I'm just saying, at the very minimum. And so, those two were the only ones that did not have a gun lock on them. And so, there's no point to put a gun lock on a Glock, and then no point to put a gun lock on the baby Desert Eagle. So, because it was in the safe for immediate usage, if absolutely necessary. And so, by my choice, by the way, I did that. I came up with that. That was mine, yes. So, it is as it is, and did as best as I could. And so, that little boy, as far as the skunk hair boy, I had every right to, because he was intruding on my property. I mean, unless the state of Texas is going to turn into New Jersey. Because if those 4 teenagers and their 2 sets of parents, biologically each, had a problem with that, then your state can turn into New Jersey as far as Second Amendment laws. Because if that actually is that much of a problem, that I had the right to defend all of those people's lives and the property of mine and my neighbors because of your 4 teenagers at that time, well, then that's your choice. Because those Second Amendment rights that I had every right to use by Texas law, by federal law, and all that, well, then you can have those laws of New Jersey in those references regarding the state of Texas, because that's my biological sister, Patricia Ann Hom. She married Zach Miller. And so you can have that as far as that's concerned. Because you already have been on that path in reference to the homeowners associations, where you're only allowed to have you can't. Unless you have a certain employment. Although I don't know if that's specified in the covenant regarding the homeowners association agreement. Because if it's not in the covenant of the homeowners association agreement for that clause, by technicalities, that's the law. It's against your constitutional rights as far as those homeowners associations that ban that, whether or not you're military or law enforcement. However, the reality of the situations. So I had every right to defend my life. Those other 3 whatevers, even Skunk Hair Boy, could have been burned because that's a reality if you don't know what you're doing. And so, you know, you'd think that those people, for caring about their little spoiled brats that much, that they'd actually be more appreciative for the fact that I actually saved them from themselves. However, you know, they probably didn't think about that, you know, because why would they? They were told what to do correctly, and they threw temper tantrums instead. And they have not apologized, of course. The little skunk hair boy had a little temper tantrum, tried to tell me he was going to tell his daddy on me, at his words, and, you know, went because his daddy was his sheriff. Okay, and if he were to tell his daddy the truth, that he had been lighting fire on my backyard patio after I had not invited him into my house or on my property. After that, after having eaten food and all that, literally a teenager version of Santa Claus, because he wasn't invited into my house, he wasn't invited onto my property. Those three teenagers, they were not invited. Compare it to Santa Claus. These three teenagers were not invited to my house. These three teenagers were not invited to my property. These three teenagers decided to eat my food and drink my drinks without my permission because they were not invited to my house. So those three teenagers, along with my biological sister, did not get invited to my house, ate my food, left the empty dishes where they left them, stirred up a bunch of needless problems, and then had the nerve to complain that I wouldn't tolerate certain situations. To which they ran to their vehicles and drove off into the night. These three other ones, whereas my biological sister whined and complained where she didn't have the right to. And so any situations from that point of, I think it was September of 2003, which, by the way, if my biological sister is upset, as far as her birthday in the year of, if she was there during that time, in regards of after having been in the state of Texas, did she say or do anything that would actually be beneficial for me to enjoy on my birthday, the 29th of August? For this lecture, the answer is I had to deal with somebody else's parents because my biological sister stayed at the house that was unmonitored with two males. And around this time, I'm not certain if it was on or after my actual birthday. And then dealt with whatever situations thereof later through September while those little temper tantrums, because then there's the aspect of calling and leaving the voicemail. And so then when I went to go pick up my biological sister from school, her little temper tantrum and all of those little teenagers, as far as that school is concerned, because of their temper tantrums, because they thought that I embarrassed her. In comparison to paying attention to the fact that those teenagers, probably no different, go onto other people's property without permission. You cannot be hypocritical in going on other people's property without permission in those references, and then as done, correct, little teenagers? And so these little needless problems, as far as that's concerned, and the embarrassments that they are, in my opinion, as far as that particular location between, on Eckert Road, I think it is Eckert Road, between Huebner, I know there's a road before Bandera, or a couple, but for that reference of an overall for that high school. On the left, when coming from my house, on the right, in reference to my biological parents' house. So that's what I dealt with for that time frame. And then my son's birthday, the 2nd of September, and my daughter's birthday, the 24th of September. So, you know, so my first birthday when I woke up from my coma, I don't know, because I was just waking up from a coma and dealing with this and playing literally with blocks to make genuine attempts to make a picture that I don't understand what that test is for. Even to this day, by the way, I still don't know what that test is for. Makes no sense that these little square blocks with one color on one side and another color on the other side and then half and half doesn't make any sense for these blocks in regards of whatever cognitive something or whatever pictures. Just saying. So I don't know what that is. It makes absolutely no sense. And yet here, I deal with these situations of teenagers where they seem to be the type that would chew on that as biological adults, they seem like they'd be littles and chew on blocks. Like biological adult rugrats. As far as that's concerned, in a sandbox, literally as in those particular references. So there's that, as far as those people are concerned. So by law, I'm writing this up in a journal blog that I will put this official YouTube video in. Yeah, so it'll help with a few other references as well. And so this particular situation is to those 4 combined with their 2 sets of parents. So that. And so after all these situations, you know, that first year, I don't know the time as far as my birthday. Second year, I was just in labor with my son. As to, you know, just there was only 3 more days of labor to be in at that time to go, because I had already had, you know, however many days of labor before, you know, the 29th of August in 2001. So, you know, excuse me, I don't remember my own birthday all the time. I was a little busy for the first one, you know, at Fort Sam Houston in medical hold unit, and then there was, you know, then there was a second one. I was in labor, you know, however many days before, after my membranes had been stripped. Yeah. See, here's the irony for this lecture. I probably sound extremely Yenta-ish, or Yeti-ish, for those who know the specific types of certain things. So excuse me, I was just in labor on my second birthday, awake from my coma with that subarachnoid hemorrhage in the frontal lobe of my brain. Yeah, just in labor for however many days before, and however many more days from the 29th of August. You know, after having gained over 75 pounds. Yeah. And then the Pitocin, you know, because that's how that goes to, you know, speed that labor up and, you know. And so, yeah, that's all. And then the second year, you know, after my son's first birthday party, you know, at that McDonald's in Forest Hill, you know, that whole situation while being pregnant with my daughter. Yeah, just saved a few lives, that's all it was. Not major in comparison to other stuff, but, you know, got some people to safety and whatever. You know, and then I went to deliver my daughter, you know, in San Antonio while my ex-sister-in-law now was upset that I wasn't at the court case because, you know, I was in labor delivering my daughter at that time. Again, a little bit busy. My birthday earlier in that same time frame, but ex-in-laws, you know, the James's birthday, okay. And so I just, you know, a few days beforehand, you know, don't pretend my dead ex-husband actually cared about me, and obviously my ex-in-laws didn't pay attention to that fact. And so, you know, that just is as it is, you know, just the 29th of August. Son's birthday is the 2nd of August. Okay. And so then there was that McDonald's thing, and then later in 2002, in the month of September, I go and deliver my daughter, you know, again, 7 days of labor to 9 days of labor-ish, the membrane stripping because, and then, and then the third year, awake from my coma, on my birthday, there's Patricia, my biological sister. And then that stuff as far as the school, and then my son's birthday that I did the best I could for, with that being a problem. And then he got to bite her though, so that's kind of an upside for him. He got to bite her, and it was a really good, funny situation. It's a great memory. It's a great memory, it is. It is a fantastic memory. It really, truthfully is. Such a great memory. Nonetheless, before going and at the time frame around my daughter's birthday, those 4 teenagers instead of that. And so then from that point on, so those pretentious 8 parents, that didn't ever, of course, take in consideration because patterns of behavior regarding Mike and Anna, as in reference to my house, as far as why are you showing up without being invited? Obviously, again, referring to that Southern Midwestern situation in comparison to born and raised in New Jersey. You don't just show up without making arrangements first. Because my biological father is a hypocrite, referencing that. There were times that his sister, Linda, would be in New Jersey, having gone to Atlantic City with Phil, and then she'd call, and Mike would get mad. Sometimes they would stop by, sometimes they wouldn't, because she lived in Manhattan. She gave him a few hours of a notice by actually calling, or days actually, and she had spoken with Anna already, and Anna whatever, and so those needless problems. So because Anna would say that Linda had to speak with Mike, and so there were those problems as far as it's concerned. And so then those situations regarding my ex-in-laws, and they knew about the after effects of my head injury. And so then there's their neighbors of people that I wasn't interested in getting to know. I didn't mind Judy. That one I didn't mind. Then there were the other 2, Linda and Mimi, that I had no want or need or desire or preference to ever get to know. Those people, and I pick up on energy, and they disgusted me just on the sight. I didn't know who they were, and I didn't want to. Yet those Southern types of nosy types and situations, as far as that's concerned. And so there's a picture in Grandma and Grandpa Nichols's house, and I pick up on energy. So I really didn't like Mimi at all. I had an issue with Linda. I couldn't handle the sight of them. I wasn't interested in really knowing them at all, However, Mimi went and tried to touch my radio dial, and I had anybody who knows how I am about it's my car. So no. So that, whatever, as far as that's concerned, as far as those people. And so, fine, they're friends with my ex-in-laws. I'm not friends with those people though. And so I wasn't really interested in those people. And so then there's that dress blues situation and those people and those types. And so then there's those needless situations. Don't care about their feelings. Don't care at all. Had to take care of my own stuff, and maybe, and if this hypothetical of those people getting involved, again, those, like a type of homeowners association, you get two nosy individuals living in houses next to each other. Yeah. It's kind of 2 and 2, because you got Judy and Grandma Nichols, and then Linda and Mimi, and that area of Fort Worth by Anglin, I'm referring to. I had that in my vehicle at one point in time, and I am me. So those who know how I am, and so she went to go touch my radio, and she was informed otherwise. And then I had an energy situation, and I informed her of apparently there was someone who had something to say to her, and so she got to listen to what that had to be and those particular references for Mimi and Linda. So anyway, that is as it is, because that is as it is. And so then there's those uninvited situations. Like, I didn't invite her in my car. That's the other thing. I did not invite her there. Wasn't an invitation at all. However, I was asked it, since I had to, because my headaches were at a migraine level while being pregnant. So she got educated by my words. And so it is as it is. And I didn't want to. I let her know I did not want to as well. By the way, I didn't hide that. That was really early being awake from my coma. So she got a really eye-opening experience in reference to how no filter whatsoever. Because, maybe a year and a half-ish awake from, no, maybe a year awake from my coma. So, for those who knew me in person, face-to-face in person in the state of Texas, most specifically 2009 through 2012, it was earlier. I had been fresh away from my coma. I had a whole bunch of words, and all I could remember was New Jersey. So she got a New Jersey experience up in Fort Worth, just say, as far as words were concerned, hypothetically. Yeah, and it was because of my ex-in-laws now's fault, so, don't blame me, they knew. And each and every one of them were like, well, you just, Eminem song, said everything that they joked about in their living room. Or their parents' living room, because it was as it was. Nonetheless, those 4 teenagers that weren't invited and all that sort of stuff, then, etiquette standards and those references, they're kind of important. And so those uninvited situations, if there's any claims in reference to where I had to drive my son and my daughter from Carroll, again, I don't know how backwoods some people are as far as the year 2009 at that point, because that's just, I don't even know what to say. If in 2009 those people were still allowing, or if, I don't know, elementary school age children to drive vehicles. Yeah, that's kind of ignorant by a lot. And so those people, as far as those situations, there's the exit 200 Starbucks for that reference point of that type of over-dramatic, needless situation in reference to Zach Miller or Zachary Miller. And so, I had every right to move from San Antonio in the year 2008, when those people and their issues where they needed etiquette. So then, that was San Antonio, 2003. 2008, I moved, and their temper tantrums, as far as those types, and all that. And so again, if they hadn't upset as far as the abomination of a wedding, which they were lucky I allowed my son and my daughter to even be there, because my biological sister was informed that I was willing to leave. It didn't matter. And so when I put my son and my daughter back in my car, she asked what I was doing, and I said, I'm not going to leave my son and my daughter with you. I don't trust you. And so that's when she realized that wedding. So all of a sudden, I actually was invited. Unlike you people in my backyard in San Antonio, at my house in San Antonio, and all that stuff, and or anywhere else from the time of 2003. So your lack of etiquette, your lack of common sense, as far as what your teenage spawn did regarding my son, my daughter, and my life, and then my property, and my neighbors, and their property, and all that, as far as my house. So just so you know, any issues are literally your four little ignorant, low-class, uneducated, ungrateful, lack of any common sense, lack of common courtesy, lack of respect, oxygen-thieving, ignorant, wasteful, spoiled, rotten, thinking that they actually are intelligent because they paid however many tens of thousands of dollars for a piece of paper, individuals that you call your family and children that were not invited to my property in my subdivision, not yours, because if you're from the Apple Creek area, not your subdivision, mine, as far as that's concerned. And so those types of those situations and those needless problems. And so then there's all that. Again, I had the right to defend. And so, however, in California, you know, they have laws that are different than New Jersey, because in New Jersey, you can still use the firearm to defend on the law books. In California, if somebody does something and then they get hurt feelings or something, in California, they can sue. But not in the state of New Jersey. If they do something, that was stricken. So if you continued causing needless problems because I had the right to defend myself and my property, lives and stuff, that's not a valid claim. Yeah, it's no different than like the news reporters that went to Washington, D.C. to the 6th of January, 2021. If you're a news reporter and you went to that and you knew it was overall you're not allowed to claim PTSD at all. That's not a real thing for you. For other people, yes. Not you. So that little group of 4 teenagers that were not invited, you don't have the right to claim PTSD because you were not invited to my property. That's your fault. You broke, enter, and stole, broke a bunch of 10 commandments. State of law, Texas is state law, my right to defend, protect, I have the right to protect and defend, and so there's all that, and those whatevers. So if those 4 little, sort of, sarcasm, but probably, and so sad. Yeah, well, you shouldn't have did as you did. You weren't invited on my property. Don't California, Texas. But those types, little temper tantrum types. Anyway, but I still had my rights. So, but if the homeowners association had anything to do with that, well, then there's no Second Amendment rights if other people in homeowners associations knew, whether in Apple Creek subdivision and or Pheasant Creek subdivision, which in turn translates that you yourselves wouldn't be allowed to have firearms in the homeowners associations by your own choice if any problems came because of that. So you would completely not have any ground to stand on in reference to those areas. And then you have the reference of Military City, USA, and legally on a military installation, only certain people are allowed to have firearms. It's law. You're not allowed to have where everybody has a firearm unless you have a certain employment. And that's it on a military installation. It's a law in the UCM. And then there's Military City, USA, San Antonio. And, with certain situations, then you have the state of Texas. There's whatever happened from 2003 through 2013, referencing those people, whoever, and then those factors, and then how my son and I wound up in Washington State after what occurred in the overall, and then whatever occurred in Washington State. And there's military bases out there, such as Joint Base Lewis McChord. Okay. And so, Seattle and Tacoma, Washington. And so there are laws, regards of those, especially if you're a Democrat, and those references. My biological sister, she was so proud to vote for 44. And so, those situations. And that's the facts as to the reality. And so, Second Amendment rights, and then, some of those situations over the past few summers. And there is a difference between peaceful protesting and rioting, obviously. And so you have those to consider, as well as the truth and verifications. And so I don't know what interstate or what have you laws, and those referenced by specific name or details. However, maybe there's an understanding regarding what situations I'm referring to. So then you have, again, regarding those four, my scuba diving is my scuba diving. And that's my work. And so those four would be capable to think about that night where they were not invited to my backyard or my property and stuff. And I had saved a whole bunch of people's lives when in the water during my scuba diving, where I earned 26 scuba diving certifications. It's kind of funny. I don't know what they spent in reference to their education for a piece of paper that they call a degree, and it's maybe it's because it's so much bigger than each one of my 26 scuba diving certifications. Maybe that's what my issues are, their size of their ego for that piece of paper and the, frame and all, whatever, however you view those particular comparisons, of course. I've been working on my Medal of Honor art project, and of course I don't have anything remotely close to someone who can afford almost an acre, if not an acre and a half, inside of Austin limits in the state of Texas in the year 2009 regarding those taxes. However, two-story house. So, etiquette. So important. So important. And so there were these situations. Honesty is important in so many ways. Respect and etiquette. And so, when that abomination of a wedding occurred, it was near Lake Travis, as anybody knows. Because of the reality. And then there's the San Gabriel River, too. That was an actual river at the time in comparison to 2019. And so, there's, I did my work. I cleared stuff out, but how situations went from 2003, there is, when I was volunteering at 9 Lives Books, as well, as far as those particular situations, don't know if there's any connections regarding those teenagers, those 4 teenagers, my biological sister, biological mother and biological father for one, and then, Adam and his biological mother and his biological father and whatever sibling aspects, and then the male, maybe Zach Miller, and then whatever biological mother, and then biological father, and whatever sibling aspects. And then the female, whatever her name was, and whatever her biological mother, and whatever her biological father, and its siblings aspects. Again, they were not invited. I did not invite them to my house. So I should not ever be held accountable for stuff that I was not ever, I didn't invite them. Protecting and defending, that's all I did. So, from then there's the stay-at-home moms group, then there's the Jade Wolf Coven, then while the San Antonio pagan community, then the supposed to be consenting adult lifestyle community, which it would be 2004. I don't know if Temple of Flesh allowed 18 years olds in there. Same thing with the BDSM community. Don't know if they allowed any 18-year-olds. 2004, after 2003 regarding that. So then in 2005, the psychic fairs at 9 Lives Books, after the situations in reference to that Excalibur fair, as far as from however many years, from 2003 regarding those 4 that I did not invite, that got upset that I defended my property and the lives thereof, which included my subdivision neighborhood. And so then, then there's 2006 and volunteering and 9 Lives Books and all the locations I went to, such as the gyms on I-10 and Huebner, the classes regarding the different ones, Atlantis Discovered, so on and so forth, those, types. So, I made attempts, so, you have that to do. And then the J.C. Penney portrait blues, the dress blues, those situations on top of while those 4 teenager hypotheticals and all that other garbage from 2004, by the way. So if my biological sister was like, oh, just do this for the grad, don't pretend that they weren't, because they were. And so if she, said the little, because, that. And so then there's, no, that's just what I don't, what, as far as my birthday, what? Okay. And so 2004, as far as those people, yeah. And so on and so forth, and So and remember, they kept coming over uninvited to my house. Remember, I've put this in writing, I've clarified, I've verified, I've had every right to stand my ground and have boundaries. And so this is what these people have done. I've gone on about this well before my journal blog updating on the ornery PSA on my website, www.susanmeeling.com. Since 2019, as far as those updates, compared to my fact books, as far as that's concerned, the discussions I had with people in person, face-to-face in person, especially since the year of 2003 onward. And so, those situations, so then 2007 and 2008, and then scuba diving. Told some people about this though. Told them about that when, the abomination of a wedding and the other stuff, all that, those types, those situations. So remember, I pick a house that's an hour away because I have my rights. Don't want to have certain things, so just that's those types that I don't have any patience for at all. Yeah, no. So that's that, and so which is an irony because depending on how you view the terminology of patience, technically anybody that I've interacted possibly doesn't want to have any that medical viewpoint of patients. Nonetheless, that is what I have done. And then I wound up in Washington State as a brief regarding that. So Club Sapphire, Washington State, more so overall, and then the states regarding my Medal of Honor Art Project trips. I believe this is the starting point, though there are some pre-2003 times, but obviously. So here's that collision. And those types, which is an irony regarding military BDSM lifestyle collision, because, comparatively, it's an irony. And so those types. So then there's my scuba diving, and I was handling business, and I'm sure that there are very few individuals who truthfully understand this in person, face-to-face in person. It's very different than, that. Obviously, and so, I was born and raised in New Jersey, and I grew up going out to the Atlantic area of the ocean. Dealt with a few things over my lifetime, from 1984 essentially to about 1990, technically 1998, though in the oceanic areas 1997, and it is what it is as far as my birth, the 1980s, and then into the aspects of Illinois, and so 1998 to 2000, but remember Indiana in 1999, and so those factors, and in reference to my scuba diving, but swimming references. So keep in mind that 1984 through 1997, oceanic waters. Around 1991 is when I got into I started taking swimming lessons at a pool. 1984 to 1991, I'm swimming in the Atlantic area of the ocean, but then I went to go get pool trained before going to a lake, but still going to the oceanic water. I think that's a little backwards or whichever mixed up way, but that's fine. So in 1998, when going out to whatever lake and water skiing, that probably makes a little bit more sense right about now. And so there's that. Although I don't know if there's any military guys that would be out there and having been scuba diving. Hi, I guess. I mean, I was technically 16, so yeah, that is what it is. As far as that's concerned, that would be weird, but you know, those people regarding those types, regarding my bikini. And so I went the way I did as best as I could. So I probably, you know, I don't know. Anyway, so then, you know, in 2003, I went out to the Gulf of Mexico. And, you know, my hair was obviously not this at that point in time in 1998 after Habitat for Humanity. And that, I don't think about scuba divers in those areas. And so near Wisconsin. And so, anyway, so there's that. As far as then, there's Ridgefield Crystal Lake Presbyterian Church issues regarding any of the people that were at the people who had the property and their neighbors, and awesome, hi. And then in 2003, down to the Gulf of Mexico, taking care of stuff for the next bit of water. And then 2004 and 2009 got into scuba diving and, you know, took care of stuff. And so, you know, again, not an invitation to my work, you know, but you were allowed to not have to deal with certain things. So in the similar aspect, you know, so early on, it was quite clear. I'm sure that if there was an investigation in reference to CID, everything was clear. It was, you know, very simple to follow along. Oh, there she is, there's, you know, whatever, quite whatever, distinguishable yet, you know, in comparison. And then, because my hair was not this at the time. And so then later, you know, as time went on. So in the scuba diving reference, while civilian recreational scuba divers, sure, they could have military backgrounds or law enforcement backgrounds or EMS backgrounds or fire department backgrounds, but if they were doing this, you know, the civilian recreational instructing, that's what they were doing. And or civilian recreational scuba diving, that's what they were doing. Doesn't matter what their background is, if they're doing civilian recreational scuba diving stuff, that's what it is. Duh. I was not. No, I was not doing civilian recreational scuba diving at all. And I informed them. Yes, I did. And so, you know, you got the morning area of dives for scuba diving. And so, you know, they didn't have to deal with anything if they had issues there beforehand, and they didn't have to deal with issues since, you know, my scuba diving would. And I'm just saying, you know, I read some reports that Lake Travis for a while wasn't having any issues. You know, after my scuba diving in 2009, you know, whatever, just saying. But it is what it is, you know, I mean, you know, they complained about, you know, and then remember the difference at Clear Springs Scuba Park as to what it used to be in a reference to the width as well as the length and the depth. What it used to be, you know, now it's kind of got, you know, where the ecology development is changing because the ground is shifting upward and the amount of water in that area in comparison to what it once was. And so, you know, while some people, I had to have it explained to me. So again, before dropping down, the only way I saw these people without this, as far as their physical, it didn't matter. They were either wearing whatever onesie wetsuit that they were wearing, or they looked like this. This is how I distinguished them. Because that's the only way I could see them. So like, this is what they physically looked as. And so this is how they looked before getting in the water. And then in the water, I took care of stuff. Was as it was. And so, they were doing whatever they were doing. I was handling business how I was handling business. And then, yes, I was also learning the other stuff. That's fine. As I said, and as I wrote about, I had to make sure that I could walk or swim around with my gear. Just saying, before I went to the ocean to handle business. Again, I didn't ever say anything about my scuba diving being recreational at all. There was nothing that was ever I actually had an argument with some people about this. They were like, oh, it's fun, it's, recreational. It's like, no. For you, it might be a recreational scuba dive, and then there's my work. And so, and everybody knew I was going out to the Vandenberg, so it's like, yeah, I got stuff to do. I'm gonna be going to the ocean, handling stuff, what? So I guess I could make a joke sarcastically. So then, this is probably especially Navy SEALs. So when you're doing stuff and prepping for stuff, this is what the POGs do, MRARs. This is so like 2000 to 2009 and after, so you see that reference, okay? It's so like go to the scuba diving and like, you have these references, ... types. Not just scuba divers, but ... types. And so, okay, I'm gonna go drop down, go ahead, they brought up how the water color changed. And it was like, oh, well, what do you call that, And they said it was muck. And so I was like, okay, because I know the difference when silt gets kicked up. And so, anyway, Yeah, I was born and raised in New Jersey, going out to the East Coast, It's kind of funny because in this TV show, I could use a pop culture reference in this pop culture, whatever, the show Scandal. What was it? There was somebody that worked with Olivia Pope. Anyway, so I went scuba diving and handled business. Yeah, was as it was. And so they were talking about like all the so the first scuba dive, and then we surfaced, and their faces looked like this, but then whatever scuba dive like onesie that they were wearing, or bikini usually for the females as far as what they did, and then I peeled down my long part of my technical bikini wetsuit, and I'd have the little strap right here, and I'd have the little tie around here, and whatever. I unstrapped. I took my BCD off, and then well, okay, I can't say that actually. I did keep some of it depended if we were going back in the water after a quick surface interval. But and so, just walked around with my, okay, fine, I had my booties on, so did they, whatever. But this is what they physically looked at, especially with the sunlight bouncing off of their whatever skin was exposed. And then water, hello. Just saying. I don't know why they thought that I would remember them. Most people probably don't walk around in bikinis when they go to the grocery store, or if they're wearing their onesie wetsuits. As biological adults, they probably don't usually wear that there. Additionally, sometimes they might not wear their BCD with a scuba tank attached. And, the mask as well as the regulator, they probably don't do that at the store with their fins. You know why? They probably be in the water in comparison. But these civilian recreational scuba divers thought I was supposed to remember them in comparison to the first time I see them, where I can actually see them, where it doesn't actually take a lot of focus. And they're all covered up in this weird whatever. And I can distinguish them from what, they got to have safe scuba dives. What are they complaining about? They did complain about some of the... They said it's called muck. Okay. I guess that's what they call it, so... I don't really call it that, but that's apparently what they've called it in 2009 or whatever, so, okay. I guess so, whatever. I haven't ever really cared to name it. It's kind of like if you take a look at my scuba diving pictures when I went out to the Atlantic as well as the Gulf of Mexico and the Vandenberg. It's kind of like, yep, I was there. Good times. I remember that. Yes, I do. Sort of. It was a great scuba dive. That was awesome. And so by the way, I guess I'll do this in 2019. Yes, so this is a forming underwater volcano. This is lob and stir and this. These are wherever, this is the Vandenberg-ishy area. It's a little bit deeper, but whatever, and just handled it, it's fine. And so, and then there's this other stuff, and because, I'm gonna guesstimate, unlike Navy SEAL types of guys, they probably, who did I have to speak with when I got out of the water? Civilian recreational scuba divers is the answer for this lecture. I'm just saying, that's the answer. In regards of the Vandenberg scuba dive, I've already gone over that instead. So, it just is, that's what it is. What? That's their fault. And so, and I didn't invite anybody, because who was I gonna have go with me? At that time, who would have believed me on top of that? Seriously, 2009? Come on now. And so, now, 2020, the U.S. Space Force was put in, after all the paperwork and all that. So that's but there's NOAA. But so now it's more along the lines of, well, if I have to do it again, whatever, fine. I don't really care, but I've already done it, so I'm just letting you I'm just letting you know. I'm not really asking to go do it again because I don't really care that I've already done it. It's more along the lines of if, otherwise I don't really care. I've already handled it. It's kind of, so my biological mother complained to my biological father that she wanted to go to Hawaii, and he had said that he had already been there. So why would he want to go? And so in my defense, I'm just letting you know, as far as the adventures of Susan MeeLing, scuba diver extraordinaire, here's me, as far as the different live videos regarding my Facebook account. I don't actually need to go back. I already handled it. But if you guys or whatever, otherwise I don't really care. I got other stuff to do. I don't need to, because I already handled it. So it is what it is. I'll just go do everything else that I want to do instead. Ish. To a degree. I got other stuff I got, whatever. So I think that, but I didn't graduate basic training, and I did not attend marine and science technology school. The reality, who was I supposed to talk with in 2009? I made attempts to ask, and yet all of them look like this. So that's the other downfall, because, this is what they looked as. This is what their face was. This is actually more defined than their actual face. When I saw them, it's it's not being rude, it's, the after effects of my head injury from Palm Sunday in 2000. And then I was in a different location. And then anybody who's done scuba diving in that sort of way, I'm going to guesstimate especially, okay, well, not only do I have the after effects of the head injury, I know what I handle, I know what I have to do, all that sort of stuff. And I know what I was preparing for. And then so I get out of the water after doing my work, and then, well, who are you? Sort of situation. Because they didn't really pay attention to that. They complained that I didn't remember them. Which, literally, you gotta take that in consideration. And so then there's that as far as that addition before the school stuff and etc. And so then there's all the other situations from that. And again, I didn't invite my biological mother or my biological father or my biological sister or my ex-in-laws to be a part of certain things. So if there's that clarifications that's been necessary to go over those factors, regarding, what I was doing, like all that had to occur was just to ask me instead, those situations. But, those four, if they had a problem regarding my backyard of my house, again, that really shows that level of pettiness, because I was kind to a point, and then when I put my foot down, something that needs to take in consideration. So those types have needed to accept the situations. All they had to do is ask me and have an actual discussion with me instead of what occurred. One and only sponsor. You don't have that same situation as in the civilian sector, or even the military sector or law enforcement sector when it comes to my son, my daughter, and I. So those people, in regards of that hypothetical, that's the needless problems you additionally caused instead. So why am I supposed to believe in humanity? Because if you knowingly do that to people, that is not acceptable. So those needless situations of those types, there's a merger coming up. 6 June 2022. So maybe there's something for them to think about during that. Other than 6 January 2021. So if those people wish that it was PTSD, you cannot compare at all. See, this is the difference for those who understand the term POG. As far as military guys, these POGs, these four who were not invited to my property, were not invited to my house, they did as they did, then stirred up needless drama, and then want to try to claim same thing as hypothetical regarding my ex-in-laws and my biological mother, biological father, whatever connected aspects. You don't have that authority to. Not when you know better. Now, unless you want to California, huge difference because of those legalities. So that homeowners association stuff, and how ex-boyfriend, ex-girlfriend, whichever one lived in Pheasant Creek, whichever one lived or lives in Apple Creek subdivision, that's on you in comparison. And there's that. Yeah, those situations. Yeah, that's, yeah, so exonerated. Clear record in every possible way. Fully. So awesome. Cool. Permanently. Amen. Especially with all that, because, yeah, especially if it's all because of that, and, you know, that's for situations to be handled and dealt with. So it's not necessarily too much satire as different viewpoints that possibly could have a different viewpoint for understanding. So maybe there's that silver lining. I suppose I can make the reference to my corsetry as those silver lining aspects, because there's actually corset lining for certain types of corsets. So silver and corset lining. I suppose I can make that as a joke or sarcastic commentary. So make sure to go to my website, www.susanmeeling.com. Check out my ornery PSA journal blog, and, subscribe to my official YouTube channel. And share the link to my official YouTube videos. If you're gonna leave a comment, see, this is an invitation to leave a comment about my video. There's the comment aspects, and have etiquette and respect. Etiquette is important. And so those reminders, as far as those for individuals that were not invited and sponsor. Yeah. And clarifications and verifications. And so I don't know how many needless problems those people caused. That's for them to count up the costs for themselves to think about the long term. Because if they want to try claiming the PTSD aspects to that backyard that they weren't invited to, and that situation, what have my son, my daughter, and I dealt with because of those? That's not even comparable, obviously. And any other individuals in between. So those types, those connected, have needed to be held responsible for their choices, starting from, although I'm sure there's some before, from when they were not invited to my property, to my house in San Antonio through my VA home loan as the one and only sponsor, the year 2003. Because again, I don't care if Adam's daddy was called, he was in Dallas in the time frame of September 11th, 2001, not in any offense to that sort of whatever. I have a little bit deeper amount of stuff, and so those types of people that weren't even in, okay, fine, I wasn't in the tri-state area. However, I was dealing with probably a little bit more. I do have an understanding as to most likely what occurred in the DFW area. I do understand that. Most likely, if he was in one of the government buildings and or towers, it was probably a discussion and then an immediate evacuation. Probably, so that way they could get out of the areas just in case as best as possible. Okay. And they were capable to get back to where they were capable to get back to. If they only flew out there, though, I understand that most likely it was obviously stressful. There's not going to be a denial of that. However, the little teenagers, you are not allowed to ever claim what you saw on the news or your mommy or daddy coming. If you didn't personally lose someone, which it was explained to me that it wasn't, that it was a life that continued on and all that sort of stuff. It's not being rude. So it was that you got life. And so, yes, okay, there's also everything that as best as everybody could do during that time frame and day of. So yeah, okay, I understand San Antonio, Texas. And in your little high school sort of situations, okay, I am 4 years older than who you went to school with. Do not forget, you need to remember, she also spent how many years in Illinois compared to? So those types of situations additionally in reference to those. Because there is that to take in consideration. So while the slamming of the door and then making my biological sister get out of the car and actually be respectful and do that correctly, I don't care about how you feel. That's my vehicle, not hers. That also shows you how that actually went. As far as the little 4 that weren't invited to my property, as far as that's concerned, or in my life. And also, don't think that just because of sending a friend request, it translates to the same. You know, you might want to talk and get permission, regards of. You know, online stuff is a bit different than in person, face-to-face in person. There are those factors. There are those differences. Just pointing that out there. You could have the knowledge that there are certain similarities, but it doesn't change certain things. People have the right to privacy, as far as that's concerned. And so, you know, that's the reality. So there's teenager types, and then there's the electronic issues. And so anybody in what's supposed to be the consenting adult lifestyle, you have 4 teenagers, 2004, but 2003, that you can, remember when I warned you about millennials? There's 4 of them that you have for an example, those 4 millennials. My biological sister and Adam, whatever his name, Zach Miller, and whatever her name, whatever. Yep. You have that as far as those millennial types, because don't let the time frame of millennials fool you. Your actual first generation of millennial graduation is in the year of 2004 from the time frame. So it's because of the actualities of, because of high school. So just for your clarifications regarding that, as people would know who are alive that saw the time frame of 4 years from such as 2000 to 2004 or 2010. So you have 2006 to 2010 for that time frame, and 2010 to 2014. You can see the difference as far as using astrological viewpoints. So you have for 2000, so 1996 through 2000, and then 2000 through 2004, astrological time frames for the month references. Then you have, even though these are years to give a viewpoint, so then you have 1986 to 1990, and then 1990 to 1994. As far as those particular references, 1976 to 1980, 1980 to 1984, for those references to take into consideration just in the high school references of graduations. Same thing with college. You have both sets. You could take a look and you see as far as those references. And so, you know, the millennial time frame. And so, yeah. So those people have needed to accept the responsibility for what their choices were. That's what that boils down to. Yeah. Yeah, they had made the choices they had, and, you know, as far as that abomination of weddings, yeah, I mean, by technicalities, I was technically halfway, irony, to those blocks invited, because my son and my daughter Sure, it wasn't a formal whatever, and obviously I was more formally dressed than, you know. However, even some of the guests, to be clear. Anyway, just pointing that out there. In those particular, I was not invited to the reception. My son and my daughter were not invited to the reception. My biological sister only said the wedding. So I only had the reference that I had, and unlike some people, etiquette and respect, I have that. So if there's not the discussion from that, so if there was, well then I guess you should have actually spoken with me instead of who you had. So you have this example multiple times over. To not go through anybody else in regards of me or my son or my daughter as their minors. Mine. Whether or not you believe mine. So, you know, if, well, somebody did the Southern, well, they didn't discuss it with me. Ever. So that's your fault. If there was that. And since I saw the size of that wedding cake, and I had assisted regarding other stuff, well, I saw the number of people there. And I didn't see what food was there. So it's called being respectful. And I did grow up the way I did. So made sure to have my son and my daughter have something else to eat instead of that. I made sure to take care of that. So that would be as that is. And so thanks for tuning in. Maybe they'll have etiquette and respect to actually make a genuine, real attempt to fix and repair those hypothetical situations and the correct manners, literally. But among a few other factors, because that would be their job. That'd be their responsibility to actually do, you know, especially, you know, after that invitation situation. And so, you know, there is through my website, www.susanmeeling.com, a contact form, which would be where I would read it. I haven't had that occur for clarifications, to actually speak with me. And I should clarify, to make the arrangements to do so. And protocol aspects, if that is a request, but it does go to etiquette. So as best as possible etiquette. If there's the unknown capacities, the attempts in the ways of being respectful, while not overstepping boundaries, but if needing to, actually doing so where there is the etiquette and respect. In comparison to certain situations between 2003 through 2013, possibly hypothetically 2013 through 2018, and 2019 through 2021 before 2022, hypothetically. So etiquette standards, yeah, they're kind of important. And the truth. So I know I physically look as I do. It doesn't change the fact I actually have etiquette standards. I actually have protocol that I do remember, and if individuals had actually been truthful with other people, so for those example of those 4 teenagers and whatever connections of, and whichever whatevers, legal definitions, that's their fault for their choices that they had the informed consent to do. In comparison, hypothetically, as to what my son, my daughter, and I dealt with. And I've taken a stand against that, so very clearly so. I'm fairly certain. Especially when you take in consideration my backyard. As far as my right to stand my ground and defend and protect myself and others if I have to. So, thanks for tuning in. Go to my website, www.susanmeeling.com. Make sure to subscribe to my official YouTube channel and share the link to my official YouTube video links. And today is the 11th of May, 2022. Hey, you know what's ironic is 44. And if you understand that, or 94. Depending on, but you know, those people such as my biological mother and biological father and biological sister and ex-in-laws, their opinions, but those blocks probably have something to do with the big aspect, as well as my headaches and migraines. So, but I guess, you know, maybe if I actually had people that I had in my life in person, face-to-face in person during those time frames that spoke the truth, it wouldn't have been as bad regarding my memory deficits. The cognitive disorders, if that has to do with those little squares or the blocks that you have to make the picture with, one that's one side, or technically I guess two sides that are red, two sides that are white, and two that are half and half. I mean, I guess in those references, that might be the cognitive something or another. But again, out of a whole box that was 8 inches by 12 inches, and I think that they were half-inch or full-inch cubes. I only got to 7 when that box was for what my educational background was before I had been in the Army. So, thanks for tuning in. Go to my website, www.susanmeeling.com. And remember, you don't know everybody's circumstances, so you don't know whether or not they have had a head injury or could because of the reality not being capable to prevent that. But then it goes to humanity. You shouldn't actually have to have that explained, though. That should be automatic when you really think about it. You guys have a good day. So the 11th of May, 2022. Wednesday.